Historians of the French Revolution work from a mass of primary sources of all different kinds. There are lots of debates over the big historical issues, just as there are debates over the big issues in science. But most historians work on very precise topics. Our precise question is, what were the effects of the Revolution on ordinary French people? Thanks to the cumulative work of more than a generation of historians, we can give pretty precise answers. In this programme, we're going to look at only a tiny, tiny sample of the vast variety of sources, noting their strengths and their weaknesses for our topic. There's one set of unique written sources which dates back to the beginnings of the revolutionary period. These are known as cahiers de doléances, petitions of grievances. To secure legitimacy for desperately needed reforms, the king, for the first time in over 150 years, summoned the historic representative body, the Estates General.
Traditionally, whenever the King of France convoked the Estates General, he invited his subjects to state what their grievances were for the Estates General, together with him, the king, to take them into consideration. Here's an unprecedented number of France's 28 million inhabitants involved in stating what their grievances are, what their discontents are, what their hopes are, what their aspirations are, what they think the authorities can do for them, should do for them, will do for them.
These cahiers went through several stages before reaching the Estates General. The very original ones were drawn up in small communities, and these give historians access to the minute preoccupations of 18th century peasants. The seaside village of Batz, near Nantes, is one example. Specific grievances were a lack of feed for their animals, unemployment, and local taxes.
But what's interesting also, and it comes through in all the cahiers at every level, I think, is the hope that something can be done. Something is possible. The very fact of drawing up the cahiers raises hopes among everybody, perhaps unrealistically, but it does raise them that something will be done for them, even at a level as small as having enough forage for the muleteer to feed his mule.
Despite the fact that these documents express the views of ordinary people themselves, historians, as always, must approach them with great caution.
It always seems to me that you've got to be quite careful with the cahiers. If you go out and ask someone what's wrong with their lives, they'll tell you. And they'll tell you various things which they perhaps hadn't really thought much about, hadn't given much attention to. But since you ask, I don't like this, I don't like that. And therefore the very process of asking people what their grievances are, to some extent, helps to create a sense of grievance, if you like, or at least raises consciousness of what grievances might be. So those are problems with the sources. All that said, it is an amazing record of people's preoccupations in 1789.
Historians can't do without written sources, but visual sources and artifacts are also very important. The Musée Carnavalet in Paris has a marvellous collection. In 1789, ordinary people were filled with hope and revolutionary fervour. There's clear evidence of this in even the most everyday objects.
We can start here, the shaving dish. You can see it's a shaving dish by the sort of design here. Central figure here is again the peasant, the member of the third estate, but he's first of all carrying the insignia of the other two orders, the Archbishop's cross and the sword of the aristocracy, and he's alleged to be saying, "Je suis las de les porter." I'm fed up with carrying these. So there's a sort of sense of social protest there, which is coming out. This bowl, I don't know, maybe a fruit bowl, I'm not sure. Again, mid-1789 probably. What I think is particularly striking about this particular one is that France is misspelt. France is spelt in this particular pot here, F-R-E-N-S-S-E. Now, no literate person would spell France like that. No semi-literate person would spell France like that in the late 18th century even. So we can be pretty sure that we're getting down to a sort of propaganda at a much lower level, I think.
There are also masses of popular engravings which depict and celebrate the events of the Revolution. Many are in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. The very quantity gives us a profound sense of the importance the Revolution had for those who lived through it. An engraving is not necessarily a factual depiction of an event. Often the symbolic elements are more important. In early July 1789, the barrières, or customs houses, sited around the outskirts of Paris, became a focus of discontent. The taxes levied at the barrière on grain coming into the city aggravated the escalating price of bread.
It's saying basically this is a popular celebration, and you can actually see people setting up a maypole or a may tree. People are celebrating the fact of taking their own destiny, their own economic circumstances into their own hands. But they can't do that without being violent. And this is the beginning of a wave of violence which results on the 14th of July, shortly afterwards, in the fall of the Bastille. So it's an economic crisis, this, but it's an economic crisis which people feel they can do something about and feel jubilant about doing something about. It's an aspect, if you like, of the opening up of expectations that the revolution brings. People can really do things about their circumstances and really make them better by taking direct action.
Above all, people felt jubilant about the storming of the Bastille on the 14th of July 1789. This is demonstrated by a wealth of evidence. One of the many artifacts celebrating the fall of the Bastille is this large painting, and we know it was painted in the immediate aftermath of the event itself. It provides us with visual details which historians would have difficulty getting from any other source.
This is at the moment at which the governor of the Bastille is taken out of the Bastille, which has fallen. He's going to go off and have his head chopped off and put on the end of a pike. You'll see that the insurgents are a motley crew. They're a mixed group. There are some soldiers there, the French guards, deserted the crown, in fact, to join the rebels. But on this side we can also see, and we can tell by the agricultural and other implements they're carrying, that this was a crowd of civilians, of just normal people, if you like, from the poorer classes within Paris. And here at the centre we can see what I think we would say is an authentic sans-culotte. Whereas most of the army, for example, are wearing knee breeches, culotte, this man here is wearing the straight trousers of the Parisian working man. He is therefore sans-culotte. And this, of course, will become a very famous figure of Parisian radicalism throughout the 1790s.
Paintings such as these served the revolutionary cause. They created heroes and villains and made ordinary people feel involved. But there are visual sources which simply and directly record what was happening. These drawings are direct, unmediated evidence of the strength of popular feeling about bread prices and food shortages,